Hello, beautiful people of YouTube, Twitch, LinkedIn, Facebook, everybody out there. I am live with the one, the only Kelly Handerhan, our favorite person at Cybrary, who has been with us since Cybrary first started.
It's true.
Everybody who's in the chat, please feel free to ask any questions. We're going to be answering questions live from everyone. But we just wanted to chat today. Happy New Year, everybody. Happy New Year, Kelly.
Thanks, Sarah.
I'm Sarah. I am a course content manager here at Cybrary. So I work with Kelly a lot to bring you the latest, newest, most exciting courses out there. We've worked on so many together. We've done started
CISSP,
CISSP,
right?
C-Risk.
CISM,
Yeah.
and we have Net Plus and Security Plus we're updating now. So
Yes.
lots of good stuff.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Wouldn't need any certifications. Kelly's your person for that. Yeah. So we are super excited. We just want to have a kind of fireside chat type thing with you all, and everybody who's watching. Ask some questions. We're glad to answer any questions live here on air. I've got them up. So let's start. Let's just talk a little bit about your background, Kelly, for those of you who may not know about Kelly. So it's just, that time old question. Tell me about yourself. Everybody loves it, right?
Well, I certainly love to talk about myself. So you found a great topic to start with. My name's Kelly Handerhan, and some of you have taken Cybrary courses may already know me. If not, I'm an instructor that has worked with Cybrary, as Sarah said, since the beginning. And I'm a big fan of Cybrary and was really excited to be part of where, we started out, and certainly just thrilled with how far we've come in just a matter of a few short years. I have a technical background. I've been in IT for the last 25 years, started out back in the day of Novell 3.1, NT 3.5.1. And, I know you're thinking, gosh, Kelly, you look so young. How could that be true? But yes, I've been around for really 25, 26 years. Been an instructor for the last 20, on and off with different topics. Love teaching, love the CISSP, and I've been teaching CISSP for the last 12, 13 years, and teach it very, very frequently. Really have a love for the material because there's so many things that we cover in it. And I, am not declaring myself the ultimate authority of CISSP by any means, but I've taught it a lot. I've had a lot of students come back to me, offer suggestions. I like to think I get better every class I teach because I do welcome those suggestions and that feedback. So I'm here to just do whatever I can to help you understand Cybrary's program, understand the mindset for CISSP, or tips to pass Security Plus or CISM or C-Risk, or really just to answer anything about the cybersecurity career that I can help you with. So not the ultimate authority, but for every one of your questions, I'll do my best to answer them. And let's give it a shot. Sarah, do you have any questions you want to start out with, or do we have any in the chat?
Yeah, sure. We've
Oh,
got
great.
some in the chat. Let's
Yay.
let's those in the chat. Wait just a second. We've got some questions we want to start out with as well. So, what makes your courses so much fun is you are a really great storyteller, and the two of us are former English majors who somehow found a way into cybersecurity. I am interested in how do you come up with these stories, and how do you find ways to connect these technical concepts to these really great stories that are helping out a lot of people.
Oh, that's nice to say. The thing for me is I started out as an English major, and oddly enough, nobody was paying me to go to their office and read Beowulf. So I'm like, okay, I've got this background, but I need to do something to make a living. I'm not somebody that started with technology at age 3, building my own Tandy or anything like that. But what I found is I had to do something that I enjoyed, but I had to make some money at it as well. Not coming from a technical background, I would take a tech book and read it and think this makes no sense. And things that people would just state, without really defining, a switch acts like a police officer at a busy intersection. Well, what does that mean? What does a switch do? How does a switch do what a switch does? And I had all these questions and I could never find a good answer for them that I could understand. So as I spent more and more time in the technical field and started to understand what a switch really does and what collision domains are and using MAC addresses to direct traffic and so on, once I got that aha moment for myself, I wanted to make sure that what I put out for other users wasn't just a lot of statements of, you know, never, always, you know, make sure MAC flooding is enabled on a switch. You got to know why, and you got to know what can happen if you don't and what it even means. So I try to cover that and bring that into my classes. For me, the best way to understand something is I have to figure out what it's like. It's like this other thing that we do. And almost every technical element that we talk about is like something else. An IP address is like a mailing address. And once you start to think about it that way, it makes a lot more sense and it makes it much easier to understand. I know that was a whole bunch of answer for a short question, Sarah. I'll try to rein it in a little bit, but that's my story. I'm sticking to it.
Yeah, and that's fantastic. I like how, you should, I think a lot of people believe that, technical and kind of the arts or storytelling, humanities types of things are in totally different
Right.
swim lanes or something. But you really show, how to understand and grasp the technical. It's not just memorizing key terms. That's always good, memorize them, but how do you understand how they work? You've got to find something that you can relate to. That's how learning works, how you memorize things and how it really sticks with you. And certainly a lot of your great examples have stuck with us in your courses. And just thinking a little bit now as we kick off 2023, thinking about certifications. You are, just the leader at Cybrary and for so many others, helping us to navigate and get our certifications. So what do you think in terms of, based on you're familiar with so many, you have a lot of certifications under your belt. Which ones do you find to be the most valuable or that you think will be really popular to be getting in 2023? If someone's looking through your courses and think, okay, we've got, the gold standard, CISSP, we have CISM, CRIS, Net, like where's it, what are some good ones that you recommend? What are some of your favorite ones to teach?
Okay, so that brings up a good point. And as many of you are aware, some certifications come on big and then they kind of fizzle out. So, what we've got to do is make sure that if you're studying and you're preparing for a career in the field, that you're getting the certifications that really do matter, that catch the eye of recruiters, of HR folks. So, military and government always are going to require you to have something like a Net Plus and a Security Plus. That's a good foot in the door certification. So if you're looking for, kind of a help desk, maybe cybersecurity analyst, something along those lines, Net Plus and Sec Plus would be pretty good. Now, of course, because it's my favorite class in the world to teach, I'm going to say CISSP, but it's true. If you look out there, you talk to recruiters, you talk to hiring teams, they're going to tell you if you want a job above help desk, if you want to get into system administration, network administration, CISSP is almost a requirement, even if the ad doesn't say it. It's kind of it's there. It's just sort of the gold standard. I think you said, Sarah, in cybersecurity certifications. Then you have to think about what direction you want to head. For folks that want to move towards management, I always think project management certifications are helpful. That just says, look, I know how to manage a project. I think CISM, where you demonstrate knowledge as an information security manager and having the ability to interpret business objectives and translate those to cybersecurity objectives. C-risk is one that even though you don't see in requirements as much, anything that says you understand the link between cybersecurity and risk management, that is always going to be of value if you're headed in the management direction. Now, if you want to stay more technical, certainly vendor specific certifications like Cisco, great certifications to have. Certified ethical hacking is one that comes up quite a bit. So a lot of it really depends on what your direction is. But I will tell you, in this field, for me, my experience has been certifications are what open the door. Now, that doesn't mean I get the job, and it certainly doesn't mean I can do the job if I get the job just with the certification. But if I have the experience and can't even get an interview, that doesn't help. So, really, The certification gets you the interview. Your skills are going to get you the job and help you keep the job, if that makes sense. And that's why having the labs with Cybrary and getting some chance to do some hands-on. So for even those of you that don't have a lot of technical experience, getting in a lab environment, getting to tinker around and run some of the programs, get on Kali Linux, or write your own security policy. Those are the things that really make this stick. Okay.
Yeah, and that building upon that, we've got some great questions here. And those of you who are watching, if you have a question for Kelly, put it in the chat. We're reading them, and we'll read some of these intermittently live on air and help answer them. So stick around, ask some questions, think about it. So let's go with one that really was building upon what you were just saying.
Sure.
How do we retain CISSP knowledge? Someone is, I think this can be relatable. They're going through the official study guide. It's a bit dry. They were in chapter 9 and they think they forgot the first chapter. Who can't relate to studying for something as being someone has a similar question about just the breadth of the CISP exam is wild. So what are some tips for retaining that knowledge?
Yeah. So sometimes people say, well, Kelly, how long did you study the first time? How long did it take you to pass the exam the first time? And I kind of joke and I say a year. The reason I say that is because I bought the book, the all-in-one guide for CISSP. It came in the mail, and I saw that it was 1,300 pages. So I then put that book promptly on my bookshelf and ignored it for a month, for actually 11 months. And then I came back and studied in earnest for a month. Okay. So the reason I tell you that is to let you know I get it. These books that you get, especially the official courseware, they can be dry. There are so many details. Listen, what I have to tell you is, or what I really want to stress, is if you're feeling that overwhelmed, you probably need to back up a little bit. For me, I bought this book that was 1,300 pages. I got probably 1,000 flashcards, 1,200 flashcards, color coded. Every little snippet and every detail I had on these flashcards, and I went through them. And I walked in, I'm not saying this to be funny. I closed the exam booklet. This is back when it was paper based, and looked to read the title because I thought I'd sat for the wrong exam. I had IEEE standards, port numbers, bit links, block sizes of algorithms. The first 25 questions I saw were on the topic of business continuity and risk management. And none of the questions that I had seen in the test prep or that I had studied for, they were much broader. And the vast majority of the questions revolved around incorporating information technology and information security with the goals of the organization. I saw many more business related questions. I think it's a business exam with a technical focus. So if you're just killing yourself going through and all the headers in a TCP segment, or, all these block sizes and details, probably you need to back it up a little bit. So the first thing I'll tell you for that is stay out of the weeds. I hear people sometimes say, you need to study for 12 months. You need to read this book twice before you even think about taking the exam. Your brain will explode. Quote me on that. It's just you can't retain everything in that. Focus on the concepts, primarily risk management, business continuity. Everything starts with risk management, everything marches towards business continuity. And the rest in the middle is how you get there. Go in with that right perspective. You'll do much, much better than you will having memorized every detail of a book of 1,300 pages. Okay. I know it's kind of a broad answer, but I hope that helps.
Yeah, I know that risk management life cycle comes up again and again in your courses, and it's really helpful to be able to see all of that. And you've got some great examples and visuals that help to retain. It's something that, you carry the thread. Same thing with the business continuity and disaster recovery. So I think thinking about that within the frame in this way is helpful. Where do we start? And we got kind of a similar question. If we think also about distilling this down, so someone's got a CISSP exam scheduled for January 20th, it looks like. Best of luck. So what are your 3 biggest tips for passing the test the first time? We've seen a lot of comments on Reddit and other places that people got passed the first time thanks to your course. So
good. Yeah. So, yeah, the exam's a lot of money. It's no joke. We got to pass this thing and we want to do it the first time. Absolutely. So, for me, the best thing anybody told me that I kept hearing in my head when I was taking the exam for the first time was think like a manager. Now, unfortunately, they didn't tell me that till the day before, so I'd done all this insane studying with all these details. But during the test, it just was so true. Think about how security can best satisfy the business, getting away from ideas like you can never have too much security. That's nuts. Of course, you can have too much security. The right amount of security is what we want to implement. So we have to understand cost benefit analysis, risk management. Doesn't mean we have to go deep. The bottom line is I'm not going to spend $50 to protect a $20 bill, right? So if you ask me what security solution fits, I have to start by looking at the asset and figuring out what it's worth, thinking about the threats and vulnerabilities that could allow an exploit. Those two together create a risk. Then I have to think about the potential for loss and compare that up against a countermeasure. So basically, the acknowledgement that security isn't free, there are always trade offs. As a security professional, I tend to err on the side of caution. Lock it down. The problem is the business has to have operations running, right? So, the most important thing to remember is that security serves the business. The business is my customer. So, when it comes to decisions, I can advise, I can talk and do all that stuff, but the business makes the decision. So, first thing, think like a manager. Second thing, don't fix stuff. Don't touch stuff. Don't do it. It's tempting. You get this question, you're just waiting to show off how brilliant you are in knowing all of these solutions. However, this exam is more about process than it is, um, what do I want to say? It's more about making sure the right processes are in place rather than just throwing down a quick band aid solution. So when they say, hey, you've got unknown traffic attempting to come in on port 2682 or whatever, one of the answers would be block the port. You don't do stuff like that. You don't do it on the exam. You don't do it in the real world. We have a process where we step back, we evaluate, we gather information, we conduct a risk assessment, we advise. But we don't just block ports, we don't disable software, we don't disconnect users or revoke credentials. All that might need to happen, but we're not the ones to do it. You are a manager on this exam. Other people will be the doers. You will be the advisor. Don't touch it. Look for the answer that has you aligning with business goals and objectives. Look for answers that say conduct a risk assessment. Look at answers that say advise. But when you see an answer that says delete, disable, block, those are all actions, and you want to stay away from those. Okay. Doesn't mean that those aren't valid for someone else, but on this exam, you are an advisor. Okay. So that kind of all goes together. Think like a manager, use risk management, stay away from fixing problems, um, think about alignment with business objectives. In there are 3 tips, surely. There might even be 4 if you look hard enough, but I hope that that helps.
That is really helpful. I know, thinking about when you're giving test tips in your courses, you really have to get in the mindset of the test and like understand how the
Yeah.
questions are formulated and being able to know your expected role when you get the
Right.
certification. And once you kind of know that, I mean, think about any kind of standardized test and things like that. You have the knowledge and you've been studying and all of that, but really, knowing how to play the game with the
Oh, yeah.
test is really, really key. And let's keep talking about CISSP for a bit. There are more
Sure.
questions. We're going to get to those again. If you have questions for Kelly, ask them in the chat. We're going to cover all of them throughout the duration of this conversation. So, speaking of CISSP, since we're on the topic,
Yeah.
you are famous for your CISSP mindset. I hear it all the time. People love this. Can you give us a sense? We're actually going to be we were just re-recording the CISSP mindset video that went viral on YouTube. We've got an updated version. Any
Yay.
key ideas, maybe one or two from the CISSP mindset overview, things to keep in mind for those who are taking the exam?
Absolutely. And Sarah, I'm going to cheat here just a little bit in saying those, the idea about the three biggest tips for taking the exam are part of my overview for the CISSP mindset. And so that's part of it. But just some other things in that little video, we talk about end game, meaning getting to the point of the question, getting to the heart of the question. Sometimes they're distractors. You got to figure out what is it they're really asking, right? So, they can throw a lot of terms and ideas at you, but generally, I find that if you focus on a handful of words before the question mark, that gets at the heart and soul of what they're really asking you about. So, you got to break that question apart. Sometimes, if you look at the answers and all the answers look good, I think people sometimes just stare at the answers. The difference between them is in the question. So if you've got some answers, multiple answers that look good, go back to the question and find out what is it there that makes this choice better than another. Like, what is the reason we train employees? Okay, that's an easy question. Why do we train employees? So answer A might be to improve security awareness. Answer B might be to modify employee behavior. Now, there's C and D, but I'm short attention span. I'm just giving you A and B. So I've upped your chances from 1 in 4 to 1 in 2. But I'll tell you, most people will say to raise security awareness. We hear it all the time. I hate to say it like this, but I don't really care if you're my employee what you're aware of. I care about what you do. And sometimes there are people that don't have a great understanding of security, but they just follow the rules. They just do what they're told to do. And there are other people that are more aware. As a matter of fact, sometimes we hear that phrase, they know enough to be dangerous. I would rather have somebody that's less aware that does the right thing and somebody more aware that goes rogue. So the reason we train people is so that they will do things differently. I conduct a social engineering training. When you walk out that door, I expect you to not let someone else in on your card swipe. I expect your actions to change. That's the purpose. Does training raise awareness? Yes, but awareness doesn't benefit unless there's a change in behavior, right? So it's a very particular mindset. The questions are kind of short and sweet, but you'll find multiple answers that certainly at first glance, they may all look right. And you got to get into that question and say, when you ask me why we do something, what is the real reason? What is that point where we're ultimately satisfied and we've done the right thing? Okay. So those are just a handful of tips. But if you'll look up Kelly Handerhan and CISSP, you'll find that I have top 10 reasons you'll pass. And like I said, we're in process of updating that right now. So you'll have even a newer version. But that'll give you an extended view of what I think the tips that you need walking in the door. Okay.
Yeah. Very excited for that. The new CISSP mindset coming soon. And yeah, I love your ideas about, again, building about understanding what your role will be and thinking about, the reasons why and the value of security awareness training, but also what people are going to be doing in response to certain events and building upon kind of training and the value of it. I'd love to talk more about we have some questions that are kind of a mix of great ones. We'll kind of go in order, thinking about those who are later career wanting a transition, as well as those who are just getting started. So again, if you have questions for Kelly, please ask them in your platform of choice. We will be reading them. But let's start out with kind of the people who are new getting into cybersecurity. What advice do you have for students, maybe those who don't have a technical background or have a little bit of it, but are wanting to advance and specifically, going from IT to a cybersecurity career? What are some
Right.
things to expect just about the understanding of the work roles, job skills that you should have, as well as any certifications?
Great. So busting into the IT field or the information cybersecurity field can be tough. When I started out 20 some years ago, you pretty much went out and got an A plus certification. You had a job as a hardware technician, and times have changed. What you've got to remember is we are still tremendously understaffed in IT and in cybersecurity. There is room in this field for every single one of you that are interested and are willing to work towards, getting your foot in the door. Certifications, I really believe certifications open doors. But the real world experience is going to be necessary once you get in the foot in the door. But Kelly, I can't get a job until I'm certified. And sometimes you can't get certified till you have a job. Here's what I did. And I'm not saying it worked for everybody, but it's what I did. First thing I did is I volunteered. I was living in Greensboro, North Carolina, and I went into a local women's shelter and said, look, I don't have any cybersecurity experience. It's been a hobby of mine, or it was more IT experience at the time in networking. But I would love to take this on for free. I'll come by once a week, for a couple of hours and see if anybody needs me to help with anything, anybody needs any training on, this or that or the other. And so basically what I did over a period of months is just kind of showed up, answered some questions from folks, did a little bit of configuration. And that got me something I could put on a resume. You need something on a resume. And honestly, if you have no experience in the field, you're not going to get paid $80,000 walking into the door, regardless of your certification, right? You got to pay some dues. Be willing to pay some dues. Get that silly little job that and you say I can't afford to do it part time. Do it 5-10 hours a week and work on building your resume and getting some experience. Now, once you get a little bit of experience, sometimes the best way to give yourself a raise is to get a different job with a different company. I stayed around with the first company I worked with, and, I got a 6% raise at the end of the year, which was the maximum they gave for doing a great job. But during that year, I obtained a couple of certifications. I went out, put my resume out on Monster at the time was pretty popular, and I went somewhere else and wound up giving myself like a 15 grand raise just by leaving and going into a new company in a new role. Sometimes you're in the same company, they kind of have you pigeonholed with what you do, especially God forbid you're good at what you do, then you don't get a chance to go anywhere else. Um, so do what it takes. Sacrifice for the now, study, get some certs, find a way to get IT on your resume, even if it's, in do it yourself, you offer certain services or whatever, at places are always looking for volunteers. If you can provide that little bit of service, you'll generally be welcomed with open arms. Okay. Be willing to take a lousy paying job for a short period of time. That'll be a stepping stone to bigger and better. One of the things I've found with this field is you don't necessarily cap out, right? With a lot of other fields, you're never going to make more than 150,000 or whatever. Be in this if you're in this field for a while, the trajectory I've seen for most people has been up, up, up. It's certainly been the case for me.
Yeah, and then you could end up being a trainer, being in training.
Absolutely. Ooh, all the joy there.
Yeah. And let's see, we've got some questions too about kind of certifications. Now, sometimes these yes, no questions are kind of hard, but for Security Plus, someone
Yep.
is taking that. Is it enough for landing a CSA job? Is that an auditor?
Cybersecurity analyst.
Yes.
The answer is I don't know. And the reason for that is every company is different. Every company, I would say it's definitely putting you in the right direction. Now, CompTIA has a cybersecurity analyst plus, CYSA plus exam that might be a little bit more tailored to that specific role. So I would think that might be something that you would add to your credentials if you were specifically looking to be a cybersecurity analyst. Sometimes companies just want you to have the Net Plus. One other thing I meant to say with tips for like breaking into the industry, don't be afraid in an interview to say, look, I have no experience. Follow that up with, but I'm willing to work hard. I'm willing to learn. I don't have any bad habits because I don't have any habits right now. And you can kind of say that with a little bit of a laugh, but I can't tell you how many people would love to have someone that comes in as a blank slate that they can train the way they want them trained. Don't be afraid to say, I don't have experience, but you better follow that up with, I'm willing to work hard and learn. And also in job interviews, folks, do not be afraid to say, I don't know. There is no bluffing that gets by people that are conducting interviews. You know, well, the thermal flux capacitor should always be full. They know when you're bluffing and when you're BSing. You know what? That's a great question. I haven't really thought about that. And I haven't seen it out in the field. But what I would do is I would go take a look on Google and just see what's out there. I might look for some YouTube videos. Tell them the ways you would learn what you don't already know, if you know what I mean, right? I don't know isn't a terrible answer if you don't know. Figure a way to say that and make it sound good. Okay.
Right. We've had so many podcasts that are addressing this conversation. We were just talking about it earlier, the cybersecurity skills gap. Kind of, it's
Mm,
so big. People are wanting to fill roles. And, they're going to put some things on the job ads, and maybe you don't tick every box. And
yeah.
sometimes, there's a problem even in cybersecurity with those job ads, asking for too much sometimes, or, you can be flexible, just be honest if you don't have that experience, but have that caveat. You're willing to learn and you're willing to grow, because we're finding that a lot of people in cybersecurity, they don't tick every box for a certain role necessarily, but if you have the potential, if you can be trained, learn fast, then you can really potentially make it work in a role, and maybe get the whatever certification you need while starting out on the job, learning things, being very hands-on. We're seeing people from all different types of fields get into cybersecurity. It's not one of
Mhm.
those fields where you get your bachelor's and then your master's and your PhD, and then you're ready to be in this type of role or something. People are coming from everywhere, starting new, and it's really inclusive, and more than people think sometimes. And again, there are various ways to get there. Maybe you're doing those part-time roles, volunteer work while doing various things, and just getting started, seeing what you like. So yeah, great questions. Let's see some other. So someone else is getting some certifications, IT Support Pro, and there's a new cert, Certified in Cybersecurity. I think that one is from ISC Squared. They're new to IT. What's the best way to find a position in cyber? So maybe
Yeah.
some ideas too about like where to find the jobs.
Yeah, there are numerous recruiters, and obviously there are different recruiters wherever you are. You can just do a Google search on, you know, IT recruiters. That's always a great place to start, though. You may not make the best money there. Search your want ads, your job engines, those places. Um, the big thing is be ready to scrap and hustle. Be ready to call a place that doesn't have a want ad out, that doesn't have necessarily an IT opening. That's how I got my first job. I didn't know they were hiring, but I called them. I asked for their IT department. The guy I got, I said, listen, I'm really trying to break into this field. I did what I said about saying, I'm brand new, but I'm willing to work hard. And he offered me an awful salary. And now keep in mind, this was in North Carolina and it was 27 years ago, but I made a whopping 5.25 an hour. Yes, nailed it. But you know what? I was in that role for 4 months. And then I got moved over to the networking team and eventually to network admin, security admin, and, with other companies along the line. So be scrappy, be willing, be humble. Don't be afraid to just go out on a limb. Somebody told me something that I thought was really good because I was like, I'm not calling them. They're going to tell me no. She said, well, the answer is no already. You already don't have a job. The worst he can do is keep you where you are. The best he could do is say, well, come in and let's talk. And that gives you that foot in the door.
Yeah, I think we call those like informational interviews. They might
Yeah.
not have something, but networking is really
Oh,
important. And so,
that's
you just Yeah,
Mhm.
message someone on LinkedIn or call a place, email, just get in touch,
Mm.
learn more about the company, learn more about offers, or learn more about others in the network. Maybe they know someone who's hiring or something. I mean, just
Absolutely.
just be, yeah, sometimes, in cybersecurity, we can be kind of introverted or not want to
Mhm.
reach out necessarily. And but networking can be important and just not being afraid because we've all been there,
And join
Yeah.
organizations. ISACA has local chapters. Same thing with project management and so on. But dig around a little bit and be willing to go out on the limb. Get your certs, polish your interview skills. Go out there and try to get creative a little bit.
Yeah, practice your interview skills with a friend, do a mock interview. Sometimes they even have services for that online. I think
Yeah,
you can do like, practice and get some feedback, record yourself. There's a lot of ways to kind of just get that pride and feel more comfortable with it and just comfortable with your 3-minute pitch about yourself, like we did with Kelly at the beginning, and all kinds of things. Yeah, so here's another kind of resume oriented type of question. Is wanting someone's a mentor here at Cyber. We love our mentor community here. If you have a Cybrary subscription, you can interact in our Discord with some of our mentors to help understand certain things. So someone's a mentor for Cyber. Maybe people are mentoring is a great way to kind
oh
of
yeah,
explore some things with cybersecurity. So maybe you are helping other people. How do we kind of leverage mentorship on a resume?
sure. Um, you know, I'm kind of one of those people that says, experience is fair game on a resume. It doesn't mean that I necessarily list that up front with work experience, but I might, towards the end of my resume, just put an additional note, have provided mentoring for this organization or that organization, much like you treat an internship. You want to get credit for that you're doing. That's the whole purpose of undertaking a mentorship or an internship. So I would definitely put it on a resume. I would definitely, just have it, you've got professional experience, certifications, just put a little section that additional notes or additional information. That's always a good way to say, here's a little something that might not fit in the box on the resume, but I want to make sure an employer knows. Get credit for every little thing you do and every little thing right? So that's how I would handle any type of mentorship or internship. Get it on that resume.
Yeah, sometimes, when you think of the resume, you've got some education and then the work experience and then skills, like, those three. But then, there's other ways you could have like a certain section that's like another heading for mentorship, and then maybe have some of that or volunteer work, something that is, maybe not in the same category as your work experience chronological order, but it's like a spotlight. And I think, showing that you are giving back to the community and helping out people, helping people get started, that looks great. You need to be a team player in some of these roles. So, yeah, let's see. What other questions? We got some more. Uh,
Oh, I just want to brag. I saw a comment that of somebody that sat through the live
ah,
CISSP course that we're working on building and kind of tweaking as we move forward. And so I think that's great. I think, anybody that takes a class at Cybrary, specifically the CISSP, I'm most likely to be the person working with you.
yeah.
And my job is to help you get there. I'll do everything that I can to do so. So I wish I knew, because there were several people in the CISSP exam. There were a few folks that jumped in and chatted. I might recognize that person that
Yeah.
commented. So post your name if you don't mind doing that, and I'll give you a wink and a nod.
Yeah. So, could you give me some information on volunteer opportunities? I have OT, ICS, Operational Technology, Industrial Control Systems,
Uh,
Cybersecurity experience with Chevron. Awesome.
oh, excellent. Well, there's some good stuff there to go on your resume. Of course, I can just kind of be very generic because we have these experiences. I wish I could refer you to a specific company that I knew was looking to take on interns or volunteers. I would start with nonprofits. I would start with the organizations that are just getting by as it is and would really welcome someone to come in that can help. I'm not going to go into Microsoft and say, hey, but if I go into a soup kitchen, Listen, they have IT running in the background. They need people and they're on very tight budgets. They need to be trained on computer programs where they can order and where they can manage. And so much is being done in the cloud today that a lot of the software they're using is going to build your skills across similar applications. So start with nonprofits. Start with, if you don't have the opportunity for paid work, give a little something back. Do what you can, few hours a week. Nonprofits profits are almost always going to welcome what you can do there.
Yeah, awesome. We've got another one looking at, let's see, so another resume question. Why do recruiters and hiring managers view CISSP as a screening certification? Is it beneficial to mention to interviewers that you are studying for the CISSP?
Okay, great. So, a couple of things here. CISSP really is that de facto standard. Now, just to address, because I know there's some of you that say, well, I know CISSPs that don't know anything. Listen, every certification's like that. There are always people that are going to get certified that aren't qualified and competent, right? It just happens. But I think ISC Square has a lot of integrity in their exams. I saw somebody else had asked about what I think about ISC Square. I think ISC Square does a great job in protecting their questions. I believe they write their questions to make sure that you didn't just memorize, but that you understand. Now, they're not perfect. I'll give you that. But I do think that they work harder than a lot of other organizations and certifying agencies. So I really am a big believer in the CISSP exam and other ISC Square exams. I think ISACA does a nice job as well. But the bottom line is, especially when the economy is iffy. And right now, unemployment isn't high, but gosh, when it is, there are a lot of resumes on recruiters' desks, and they have to have some criteria. I got 100 people looking for an IT job. Well, I can't give 100 people an IT job, so I have to start whittling down. Certifications are usually the first thing that they look at. And many of you'll say, well, they should look at experience. I can't control that, right? I kind of agree, but what's going to happen is you're going to get resumes in two decks. You're certified or you're not. And then in those certified folks, then I'm going to go through and look at experience and, additional characteristics, but that's a good one to have. Also, the government and military have a Department of Defense standard. It was 8570, then 8140. I don't even know what the standard is right now, where they require certain certifications for certain jobs. And sometimes the commercial industry looks to what the government is using as kind of their standards. So that may be why you see certain certifications as generally used for, credentialing or
Yeah,
requirements.
really helpful advice and thinking about some key terms here. Let's see. Let's another kind of resume oriented question. What are the specializations available for a cybersecurity trained personnel whose duty is toward the business continuity and disaster recovery of a business?
Okay, so let's see. That was a lot of words, Sarah. My brain heard, what are the
Yeah, so
specializations?
they're cybersecurity trained personnel. They're doing business continuity, disaster recovery. They
Yeah,
want to kind of focus on those roles. What are some specializations available for that?
that's a great question. So there are various organizations that present certain frameworks and certain approaches to disaster recovery. So the International Organization of Standards sets forth the ISO, what is it, 27031 as their standard. With NIST, there's 800 34, there's the Disaster Recovery Institute International. There are all sorts of organizations and agencies that provide certification based on their frameworks, right? Um, so, what I would kind of consider doing is consider getting some of those external certifications or one or, ISO, you can't go wrong with the International Organization of Standards. And if you're wanting to work with the government or military, NIST is obviously a good framework to become knowledgeable with. Risk management understanding is obviously critical in business continuity. So, having some risk management certifications to go with your knowledge with BCP and DRP, those are just some ideas off the top of my head, what I would think.
Yeah.
Right?
Right. Now we have another person talking about a particular coming back into the field. This is a great question. I worked as a SOC analyst for 3 years, but had to be away from cybersecurity
Mm.
for about a year. And what are your suggestions for the best certifications to refresh my memory and get a job back?
Yeah, absolutely. And we all have life situations that bring us away, and we've got these gaps in our resume or these, gaps from the field. So I think you're thinking about it the right way. What can I just roll up my sleeves and do real quick so that I can get back and become more marketable? I kind of stick to the basics. And the reason I do that is that's what people are looking for. People are requiring you to have a security plus if you're going to be anywhere near cybersecurity. Um, Network Plus. If you're going to be in IT, you got to understand networking today for the most part. CISSP sort of encompasses the knowledge of both of those. Um, you know, but I'll also tell you vendor specific certifications are really nice as well. And the first one that comes to my mind is Cisco. Cisco certifications are hot. They're going to be hot. Cisco isn't going away anytime soon. And if I have something like a CCNA, that tells my employer not only do I know how to work on Cisco routers and switches, but routers and switches route and switch. So if I have that certification, that really applies, and every organization is using in some capacity routing and switching. So, certifications that are vendor specific yet broad enough to be used in most environments, I think those are real helpful as well.
Yeah. Now we've got a question about someone who has a job, but they're a little frustrated with it. And I think this is a good question. So, what should you do if you are highly security aware, but your job doesn't take security seriously?
Great question. And listen, so that was a battle I fought for a long time. I worked in the government. I won't, you know, go into any details there, but what I found was that change comes very slowly, even if leadership is on board. And if leadership isn't on board, you're not going anywhere. So the first thing I will do is address your mental health. Know what battles you can fight and which ones you can't win. Right? Choose your battles. The best I can do is I can manage my little sphere of influence. But we have an obligation as those folks that understand security risks out there to educate and inform. And so many times in trying to get senior leadership on board with the security function, we go in there and we talk in acronyms and jargon. And senior leadership says, look, we're a hardware store. We just want to build hammers. I don't want to talk in letters. That's fine. But we have to understand the value of what we're protecting, customer data. We have to think about the vulnerabilities that unpatched systems, outdated hardware, lack of security devices bring in. We have to talk about the threats that exist. We have to talk about potential for loss. We have to talk about we're going to lose this much money or we can invest in security. Here's the value that would be presented. Long and short, that's risk management, that's cost benefit analysis, that's return on investment. So rather than they need to learn our world, maybe we need to translate our world into ideas that they can understand. Many senior leaders are not technical, but all senior leaders, with few exceptions, I'm sure, get cost benefit. They get return on investment. They understand liability. Talk to them about liability. Look at the field that your organization operates in. And, you're in the government, talk about the Office of Personnel Management. There was just the tiniest of breaches with OPM. I pause for laughter, as I'm sure some of you, on this uh, streaming session right now had your personal data loss, but it's everywhere, So try to bring security to them in small bites in ways that they can understand because ultimately they want what's best for the company too. They just may not understand from a security perspective what's necessary to get there.
Yeah, reminds me of one of those video games where you're talking to a certain audience and you have to use a certain type of persuasion technique or appeal, and you have to think about your audience a bit and what key terms and things that you can say. It's all about knowing your audience. Really important to getting that buy-in. So this is really great advice. Yeah, the questions keep coming in. Thank you for sending.
Yay,
So
you guys are
let's,
doing great. Thank you for
yes,
the questions.
yes, thank you. So let's see. Someone recently passed the CCSP, failed CISSP twice already, but I think they're equally difficult. We got another question. Hopefully, we can combine about how difficult is the CISSP, and we touched on that earlier. In your opinion, which should one take first? So we're talking about CCSP and CISSP. I personally think I should have taken one first. Like, what do we think? Which one first?
Yeah. Okay. So the CCSP, for those of you that don't know, is Cloud Certified Security Professional. That's an ISC certification, as is the CISSP. So they're closely related. So there is an overlap of material. I found the CCSP exam to be pretty straightforward, but that's because I'd been teaching CISSP for years. So I didn't find that there were a lot of things that were real stretches for me. But the flip side, having had CCSP, that's a very specific, cloud-based focus. So coming and broadening from just that sort of microscopic view of what goes on in the cloud, I don't know if that's the right way to say it, but you get what I'm saying, is challenging. And so, first of all, I just want to acknowledge the effort that you had to have put in to pass CCSP. So that's terrific. It's a great certification to have. It's going to suit you well. Now, what we want to do is take that and translate it to a CISSP, right? So, you've got the networking ideas, you've got ideas about application security, federated trusts, all that shows up in CISSP. But what you have to do is go in with, I think you should be less technically minded in CISSP than in CCSP. So, my initial thought would be, it sounds like to me you've done a lot of studying, have gained a lot of good knowledge. So, what kept you from passing? It may have been your mindset. You might have gone in and started fixing problems, creating trusts when what you really should have done was conduct a risk assessment first. Maybe not reading the questions the right way and saying, oh, here's what they're really asking me. So what I would encourage you to do is to go out and look at that CISSP mindset. And once again, it's on YouTube. It's free. I'm not doing a commercial for anything I'm getting kickbacks on. And I've kind of am working with Cybrary to get it updated. But what I have out there on YouTube, just type out Kelly Handerhan and CISSP, you'll get to it. Those are going to be some things that maybe you missed in taking the exam. So, first of all, it may not be your knowledge at all, it may just be your approach to the exam. But focus on risk management and really understanding those concepts, business continuity and disaster recovery. Those are two huge topics on the exam that aren't as big on CCSP. Um, I think that make sure you're solid with cryptography. Cryptography is a little bit broader, or it's a little more tested on with CISSP. Um, what I'm going to tell you to do is look at my class on Cybrary. Of course, I'm going to tell you that. But if you don't, find some good test prep, review some good simulated questions. Biggest thing to watch for on CISSP test prep is you might have test prep that gets too technical. And so it sort of shapes how you study. I think Cybrary has some great test prep that you can get along with the courses. And, um, I think if you've passed it a couple of times, you probably want to get some outside guidance on how to pass. Again, not because you're not smart enough, you didn't study hard enough, you're not this or that, but just to make sure you're exerting your energy the best way. It is a passable exam. Many people say, oh my God, it's so hard. If you have the right mindset and have someone help you weave through these 1,300 page books, you'll get there. Okay. Don't give up. Don't lose confidence. You now have had 2 looks at the exam that will show you how to study. Okay. Good luck. Good luck on that.
Yeah, good
Yeah.
luck. Let's see, there's another question. You were talking about risk management. So, someone really is interested in cyber risk assessment methodology and what certifications or courses should they take? They took ISA risk assessment. I'm thinking C risk or CYSA, some
Yep.
things. What do you think?
CRISC is great to take. It is certified in risk and information systems computing. Great certification to have. Really looks at risks across specifically cybersecurity, and then also just some more generic ways to think about risk, assess bias, um, conduct assessments. I think that's a great class to have. Um, NIST's risk management framework, which is from NIST 800 37 special publication, is a good insight into designing secure systems, but it's more the philosophy of designing secure systems that would help you a lot. NIST 800 35, and all these NIST documents you can download, but just to kind of absorb and sort of look at, a very procedure based approach. I think making sure that you have a methodology that you can define that you use to assess risks. And you can't go wrong referring back to NIST documents and going through those processes. So I think that even if there aren't other certifications other than C-Risk that I would immediately say, yeah, get that. Just reviewing some risk-based documents and familiarizing yourself so that you could talk intelligently about those in interviews, I think would be a help.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so we have some people in cybersecurity, remote jobs are becoming pretty popular.
Yes.
Someone really wants more remote opportunities. What certifications would provide more of an advantage? Would CISSP, any others you'd recommend for remote work?
Yeah, I have to tell you, as terrible as the pandemic has been, and as many lives have been affected with that, negatively, and I certainly acknowledge that, there have been some results that have come out that have been positives. And one of those is the fact that companies that for years and years and years said, we can't let our employees work from home, all of a sudden said, oh, we let our employees work from home and it worked. So I don't know that there's a specific certification that would lead to homework as much as it is finding that right company. If any of you followed Elon Musk's statement to his folks at Tesla, you guys can go pretend to work for somebody else. If you're really going to work, you'll be here in the office and be prepared to work 70-hour days. Nope, not for me. As a matter of fact, I'm singing the no, 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 singing that song in my head, right? I want to find a company that's going to support me as an employee. I'm going to find a company that is aware of the fact that we have proven throughout the pandemic that people can work from home and be just as or even more successful. So to me, it's more about the organization. It's more about working with progressive companies that are willing to explore some different ways. I don't think there's any one cert because anything in cyber, with few exceptions, can be done remotely. Network administration and cybersecurity. And if anything, what I would want to avoid would be the things that are already being outsourced. I would, I'm not exactly sure how to elaborate on that, but there's, a lot of help desk work is already being outsourced. So, getting into that and working from home may not be as successful because a lot of those jobs are already remote and are already filled. I don't know, Sarah, is that making sense? What I'm saying is
Yeah.
is is kind of, what we're seeing newly opening up to working at home so much more is, cloud computing, security specialists, network administration. So I honestly think you pursue your technical certifications and experience as typical, but look for organizations. Don't be afraid to ask that in job interviews or ask if you're going through a recruiter. Ask them before, make sure it's clear that they understand this is what you're looking for. For me and most of the folks here at Cybrary, we almost all work from home. And the tremendous quality of life that that adds. I'm in the DC area, and in the past, I used to have to drive on 495, which is Virginia's largest parking lot, if you haven't been on it. I save 2.5 hours a day working from home. I'd be willing to take a little less in salary to be, 90% less likely to strangle someone on the highway, right? So, kind of think about that. Think about what you're willing to trade for working at home. Sometimes the salaries are a little bit lower, but the quality of life goes up. Those are just my thoughts. Yeah.
Yeah, we got a question also about speaking of cloud.
Ah,
What do you think are the most in-demand areas right now, other than Cisco? Like thinking about your cloud certification, which to specialize, does your cloud certification choice depend on your geographic area? Whether you should pursue AWS or Azure.
yeah. You know, my leaning is, well, I have to be careful what I have to think about what I say before that. Um, I think that you're not going to go wrong with either certification, right? And we're all moving to the cloud in some capacity or another. Um, Azure being more associated with Microsoft, AWS providing, a large range of services. I think that I'm going to um, to politely decline to pick one over the other, but to say I don't think you'll regret being certified in either. Right? I don't think you're going to get Azure certified and say, wish I hadn't done that. Azure's not going away. AWS isn't going away. Certainly neither of them for any foreseeable future. So pick one, go with it, study, get certified. Also, consider some non-vendor neutral or some vendor neutral certifications. Think about your CCSP, which comes from ISC Square, Cloud Certified Security Professional. Think about the CCSK, Cloud Certified in Security Knowledge or something like that. Letters run together this late in the day. But that's from the Cloud Security Alliance. So, they're sort of the authority on cloud security to a degree, right? So if you think about just adding until you lean or have, or led to a specific direction, one or the other, go ahead and do some resume builders. I found the CCSK certification to be surprisingly useful. Like they really focused on a lot of practical stuff. Honestly, while I was studying for it, I learned a couple of things. And again, I'm not saying, oh, I'm all knowledgeable. I never learned because I know it all. But I mean, I remember going through that thinking, God, I'm glad I studied for this because I wasn't aware that this would work that way or this would connect. And that's not always the way for certification. Sometimes you check one off to get it. But I found both CCSP and CCSK to be really informative, good courses.
Yeah, and speaking of kind of certifications and things, let's kind of combine a couple questions that we had. We had someone, talking about how do you remember all the terms? I know you mentioned flashcards, and also related question: how long should you study for the minimum for an exam, like CISSP, or just in general? Like, is there kind of a formula you have for like if you're going to take it this day, how far in advance should you start?
Great. So, as far as remembering the terms, buy a book and go through the glossary, I think. And there are also, you might even just type out CISSP glossary because that does matter on an exam. And it's not that they're going to ask you what does um, UDP stand for, but you'll get the definitions for the terms that you need. Focus more on concepts. One of the nice things is they spell out acronyms on CISSP. You will not have to memorize that, elliptical curve cryptography. You'll see ECC and then they'll spell it out in parentheses. So that should take some weight off your shoulders in just memorizing. Find ridiculous tricks and tips to memorize stuff. I give you some of that in the course because there are just some things, which algorithms are symmetric, which ones are asymmetric. That's tricky to keep in my head. What's Bell LaPadula versus Bibbo? What's this versus? I don't know. Especially because some of this stuff may be a bit esoteric. So find some mnemonic tricks, type out memory tricks for remembering the OSI model. Actually, don't do that because there's some really terrible, inappropriate tricks for remembering the OSI model. Actually, if you do that, just be aware that there's some things you can't unsee. Sarah, I've just guaranteed that 200 people are out Googling mnemonic tricks for the
Yes,
OSI
I've
model.
seen quite a few.
Oh, yes. A little scary there.
Oh,
Let's see.
I got another cloud one.
Okay.
What was
Oh,
anything
I
was?
was going to say, did I answer that? I don't know if I got
Yes. Oh,
distracted
and
or.
how long?
Oh, and how long? You know, I'm going to say if you can take a Cybrary course, um, then I would look at it as a matter of weeks after the course, not months. If you're doing it on your own, that's a lot of information to digest and prepare, and you may not have enough direction to really weed through. So it's going to take you a lot longer if you go out and buy a book. You may be looking at, okay, here's a 1,300-page book. I'd say give yourself 6 months. If you can come in, if you can take a course in Cybrary, use that in conjunction with the other materials, I would want you to study a matter of weeks, and I would be pushing you to take it sooner rather than later. That's my belief. Of course, that means you got to come in, you got to study, you got to pay attention to the course, you got to take notes, you got to do all those things. But with just a generic answer to you, if you take our course on CISSP, I would put you being ready to take the exam within 3-4 weeks. And that's not a full time everyday study, but that's a couple hours each night. Every situation's different, but that's my generic answer.
Yeah, get the information in, and then while it's fresh on your mind, go ahead and take it. Don't be kind of dragging with you.
Yeah, and
Done.
I feel like people will know during you know, by the third or fourth chapter, you'll know where you are. Oh God, it's going to take me 6 weeks to get this in, or oh, I got most of this. I'll take it in 2 weeks. Right? You'll get that idea.
Yeah. So we got some cloud people here today. I'm going in the cloud, thinking about CCSP and the CCSK ones. Not sure. Any recommendations for someone getting into cloud?
Yeah, honestly, I would probably go CCSK first and then move into CCSP. And certifications can be expensive. So, some of these certs kind of price themselves out, which I think is an absolute tragedy that the market loses out on some great people because they want to give you an $800 exam. But if you're able, the cheaper of the two is the CCSK. I can't pull the cost off the top of my head. And that's a good, meaningful, valid certification. And if you can add CCSP to it, I would do that as well.
Yeah, I think this might be our last question before we kind of wrap. What career progression options do you see after senior information security analyst, security manager? Any of those?
Yeah, so, I would be moving towards a CISO within an organization would be the one direction I would think of. Um, it really depends on what motivates you. Do you want to continue up the management level? Do you want to work more with the technical aspects? If you're more technical, think about engineering or architecture of particular environments, um, more managerial program or project program management, CISO role, chief risk officer role. Those would be the ones that come to my mind the quickest.
Awesome. Thank you so much for your excellent questions. Thank you, Kelly, for answering them. If you have further questions, if you're watching the video on demand, please ask them and we will be sure to pass some things along to Kelly. We'll keep the conversation going in the comments. So this will be on YouTube and on LinkedIn and everything. So we definitely want to keep this door open. Let's end with kind of a game, a fun thing.
Ooh.
Kelly, if you take any of Kelly's courses, you know that she's famous for her stories and her fun ways to help remember things. So I want to say a key term and say like the first thing that comes to mind, or maybe a good acronym, and maybe just a few sentences or so of a good way to remember it, maybe a teaser for what you're going to get out of a course. So let's talk first about Kerberos.
Hold on. Let me make sure I understand. You're going to tell me a technical term,
Yes.
and I'm going to give you a snippet of what I think about.
Right.
Okay.
That's the game.
So when I think of Kerberos, I think about a carnival. You come in the admission booth one time, you get a wrist strap, you go ride your rides with a ticket, though. So once through admission, many times to the ticket booth, back to the ticket booth for every ride you ride. That's what I think of with Kerberos.
Yeah, I love the graphic that we have for that one.
The Kerberos Carnival.
Oh, yes. It's always a fun lesson. APIs.
I think about Starbucks when I think about APIs. I think about how I might go to Starbucks, and my preference would be if I walked back behind the counter and made my own cup of coffee because I'm very particular how I like it. But they're not going to let me behind the kitchen because I'm untrusted. So I have to go through their API or their barista. So when I go in and say I'd like a large coffee, she says, "Don't you mean a grande?" Well, no, I'm in a large, but if you need me to say grande, I'll say grande. I'd like I'd like a slice of pizza. Well, they don't have pizza. So that barista is going to reject a request that's not legitimate, right? So you've got this go-between an untrusted entity, which is me, and the back end kitchen, which is their protected resource. And we never want to let someone untrusted like me get to a trusted resource. So in applications, we use an API to allow those two entities to communicate.
Yeah, another great graphic. I see the visuals for that one. Yeah, I think that coffee example is awesome.
Okay.
Let's see. User Datagram Protocol, UDP.
Sarah, what's the best thing about a UDP joke?
What is it, Kelly?
I don't care if you get it or not. I hope you guys understand UDP, or that's not funny at all. And even if you understand UDP, that's not funny at all, but it makes me laugh. Makes me smile.
Yeah. All right. Initialization vectors.
Oh, initialization vectors. So if you have any sort of digital music player and you put them on shuffle, you're going to find, even if you put it on shuffle, you're going to have the same obnoxious song that you don't even know why you put on your music list come up more than others. It just seems that way. And actually, my digital music list I've had it for decades. And way back to when I had an iPod, I had loaned that to a friend of mine who was driving to Canada, and she downloaded the soundtrack to the Broadway show Annie on my iPod. So here we are 20 years later, and I know I can delete it. I just never think to do it. So I pull up to a stoplight feeling kind of cool. Next thing I know, the sun will come out tomorrow, blasting through my speakers. So the question is, if I put it on shuffle or random, why isn't it random enough? Why does the same stupid song keep coming up? Because there's not enough randomness. And one of the ways we can add randomness to a random process is to randomize the starting place of that random process. That's what an initialization vector does for me. We're going to add randomness to the beginning of the process to get even more randomness. If you've heard of assault with passwords, salting passwords, that's all we're doing.
Yeah, I always like that one, the randomness. All right, we're going to conclude today with a kind of special announcement, a teaser of something, a new product that we're launching here at Cybrary. So if you remember back in the old days of Cybrary, Kelly was a pioneer in our Cybrary Live trainings. And we are proud right now, we're only introducing it for Teams customers. So not for CIP yet, but for Teams customers only, some live training sessions with Kelly. So virtual, on-demand, virtual live trainings. We also have our on-demand trainings, or we have some new courses with CISSP, CISM, CRISS. So all of those, everybody with a CIP subscription or a Teams can, watch those as we call it Kelly as a service, right?
That's right.
Yeah,
Everything is a
so
service,
you're
Kel.
right. We've got SAS, PAS, IS, and CAS. Kelly as a
That's right.
service. So now we're going to have some live trainings that we've just launched right now, just for teams. So go on our website to request a demo and to learn more. So what are some things? As someone in the chat, were a part of our first one for CISSP. How did that go, Kelly? And what are some things that we can expect from some of your live trainings?
Oh, I think it went terrific, and one of the things I loved is we were, able to get some good interaction with the folks that were there as part of the class. That's the real benefit of taking a live class. You've got a question, you can get it answered right then and there, and we had a really good mix of students. So even the students that were a little bit more shy that didn't ask questions, I'm sure their learning was tremendously enhanced just by hearing other people ask questions and get their answers. They're also more fun. You know, I had a class with a great sense of humor. I like to be a little ridiculous from time to time, and I feel like we just had fun in that class. Yeah, we got to talk about some tough topics and can get technical, and there's some things that there's just some business you got to do and get down to, but we can also do our best to make things interesting. You get sort of that student teacher interaction that always brings a little bit more life. So I love doing the live classes. I'm looking forward to doing our next one and our next one and the one after that and that and that and that too. But I really, for those of you that are already teams members or organizations that are considering it, I think the live class is terrific too.
Yes, more Kelly. So thank you so much for being a part of this wonderful Q&A session. Those of you watching, thank you for joining. And those who are watching on demand, again, if you have other questions for Kelly, leave a comment, and we will be glad to help you get in touch with Kelly, or we'll respond to your questions and everything. So thank you so much for your time, everybody.
Thank you all. Really appreciate you. Best of luck in the future.
Bye,
Take care.
everybody.